Afternoon, everybody, and a massive thank you for everyone who's joining us live, and also those people who are watching us back. I know lots of people tend to watch us back on these pre-recorded events, and you can always see both this LinkedIn Live and previous ones that we've done through this series through my profile. So do please click there and watch back some of the other ones. So this is a continuation of our previous series from Behind the Wheel, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Sarah and by Will. And what I wanted to do just to start, because I'm conscious not everybody watching us lives in the world of parking, I'm hoping today will be an education for those people within our sector, but also raise some awareness for those people outside our sector, the work that we're doing to constantly improve the services that we provide. So I think everybody watching will have some involvement in parking in every day of their life. But first of all, why don't I ask Sarah to give us a little brief introduction, both to yourself, Sarah, would be great, but also maybe explain the role of the BPA.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. Absolutely. Sarah Roberts. I work with the British Parking Association, and I am head of the Conformity Assessment Body Transition, which probably means very little to anybody. Let me explain. The British Parking Association have been around for over 50 years, very interested in raising standards in parking. I particularly look at parking on private land. So that's the part of the sector that I am responsible for. There's some change going on in this particular area, and a requirement in the future that operators working in this sphere will be audited by conformity assessment bodies. That's not something that's currently operational, but I am looking towards the future, and therefore my job title, Head of Conformity Assessment Body Transition, reflects what the future might bring. But in essence, at the moment, I am looking after compliance monitoring of private operators against the BPA's Code of Practice, which mandates the standards that we expect from those operators in that field. So thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Sarah. And Will, if you're happy to do the same for us.
Hi, yeah, I'm Will Hurley, one of the founders and the now CEO of the International Parking Community. We've been going about 12 years or so when there was a piece of legislation that came in that banned the immobilisation of vehicles, or the clamping of vehicles as people commonly refer to it. We got involved in the industry because we saw a lot of the frustrations that were there. I'm a solicitor, that's my background. I was practicing in private practice at the time when we found the IPC, and ultimately we could see an opportunity to give advice and support to people who were managing land, because a lot of people wanted to do it right, but didn't necessarily have the wherewithal or the knowledge or the experience to do it. I suppose, and also not content with being disliked for being a solicitor, I thought I'd get involved in the management of private land with parking, just to bolster my CV in that way, because that's what I think we're going to talk about. It's an emotive area, but yeah, our aim at the outset was to help those managing land that issue parking charges, because I think both the British Parking Association and ourselves give their members access to registered keeper data from the DVLA, and that's the one key thing. And the management of the industry has been very voluntarily, because people don't have to be associated with trade associations, but that's why they are members of ours. And we've done it with the Code of Practice, and obviously we're looking to the future now, doing a lot of work. I think me and Sarah have spent far too many hours in the last month or so. But yeah, that's a snapshot of me.
Great. Well, thanks both. And I know today I kind of wanted to explore two topics really. And I guess for me, what's been particularly interesting is seeing both the BPA and the IPC come together to move towards a single standard and a single code of conduct for all operators, irrespective of which body they're associated to. But before I get there, I really want to tackle this view of the perception of parking. Now, I guess full disclosure, my involvement in these types of schemes goes all the way back to working with Transport for London, actually, in the introduction of the congestion charging zone And at that time in 2005, what was the low emission zone around the M25? And I guess since then, over the last 20 years, I've only ever felt a general public negative perception of this sector of setting rules for compliance, and then there being a consequence where people breach those rules. And I'm really proud to kind of lead Egina Group. I think the services that we deliver to our clients are incredibly important in terms of keeping, you know, areas free from congestion, keeping local neighborhoods moving, keeping local communities alive with the facilities and the services that we provide through parking. But there seems to be this inbuilt negative attitude towards the sector. I'd be really keen just to kind of explore, I guess, your thoughts on that. You know, what do you come up against in terms of people's views of our sector, and what we think really sits behind why people have that instant kind of negative reaction to parking? So I don't know if anyone's got any stories they want to tell or any thoughts about why we seem to breed that negative perception.
I don't know whether it's something that people think should be just free, you know, free parking, that perhaps it used to be free when there were fewer cars on the road and there was less pressure, less congestion, and, you know, something that the council used to provide free, and now it's a paid for service in some instances, not always. But I think, you know, perhaps people begrudge the requirement to spend money. I certainly know, you know, if you're going to the cinema, you're quite happy to go to the cinema and spend a lot of money on a big carton of popcorn and buy your tickets to sit in your lazy boy chair and have a big old recline for 15 quid. But to pay £3 for parking or something is, people, gosh, do you know how much it cost me parking, you know, and that sort of thing. And I just wonder whether there's a, you know, perception that people believe that parking should be free, when actually the landowner, the person who owns that piece of land, has a choice, don't they? They have a choice of what to do with that piece of land. And if all the car parks in a town centre were actually converted into restaurants and facilities, and there were no car parks anymore, and the landowner chose to make their money by serving meals and taking revenue that way, then nobody would actually be able to access any of those facilities, because all of that privately owned land would be offering paid for other services, and everybody's business would go into economic decline. So I think it's perhaps that people don't recognise that actually the sector do provide a service, and that they don't understand the consequences of that provision not being there. Maybe there's some history in terms of what you know, the towing away in the past, the negative connotations of that we've moved away from in terms of managing private land. But that's my opening gambit on that.
Well, and how would you kind of best summarize the service that's provided in terms of parking? I guess both to the motorist and the people who use these facilities every day, but maybe also, to Sarah's point, to the landowner.
Yeah, I think for me, just to come back on that previous point, I think I put it down to three things that we have this perception. It's down to emotion. Somebody in the NHS once said to me that vehicles to the Brits, and I think your point was you've always been involved with vehicles and penalties, and I think it isn't just parking, it's vehicles that the emotion's there for. You know, vehicles to Brits are like the guns to the Americans, and there's these two polar views. You know, people are really upset by it. The landowner's really upset if somebody parks on their land and abuses it. You know, if you park and block somebody from getting out of their drive, somebody gets particularly upset about it. Equally, the motorist gets upset if they receive a parking charge. And then another aspect is the media. I think the media, we live in a society these days where everything is instant. It's instant. You know, we never get opportunities to sit. It's really good today to sit and have 40, 50 minutes to talk about things. But the media need a one-liner, they need a headline, they need something like that. And that's created by Father Christmas getting a parking charge. It's not created from the other side. And so it's actually difficult. And then I think in society, there's this lack of understanding of the service that we provide as an industry. And, you know, the bits of land that is managed by our members and the members of the British Parking Association, it is not just car parks as we see it. It's every single piece of land from a derelict piece of land that's waiting to be built on, a private driveway, an airport roadway that needs to be kept clear for all sorts of safety and security, to a car park. And I think people often, get in their cars, they feel protected in this box of theirs. They feel like they don't do anything wrong. When I go back to my career and when I was practicing criminal defence, I'd have people charged with really serious criminal offences, and then a driving matter would be tagged on that they were going to get no separate penalty for, and they'd happily plead guilty to the serious and accept culpability for what they'd done wrong, but there was no way that they would accept they've ever done anything wrong for their driving matter, and it would become a point of principle. And I think that's it. I think, all of that together, people just don't really understand. They get emotive about it, and then it's a problem. And I think we as an industry need to be better in, and I do think that there has been a marked change. When I look at stories that are in the media now, and you look at the key thing, what people are commenting at the bottom underneath, a lot of the time, well, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have done the other. So I think we can do much more to give an understanding and make people aware that we might be providing a service to them to park. We might be providing a service to a landowner to make sure people don't park, and the consequences of their actions.
And I guess it's interesting. There's always that focus on the negative aspect of what we do, and obviously, both us, Agena, and lots of members across the BPA and the IPC will enforce against individuals who have parked their vehicle in contravention to the rules at that particular location. And I guess we've all seen the headlines around the number of parking charges issued and the growth that we've seen in that since this sector commenced really in 2012, following that Protection of Freedoms Act legislation change. And so it'd be good to talk about, from both of your perspectives, why do you think we've seen that growth in parking charge notices? Let's tackle that one first. I'd like to talk about what can we do more about the positive reinforcements that we deliver, which doesn't involve in a PCN, and be great if you've got any stats to support any of those. But yeah, let's maybe just take that first point. What's really driving this growth in parking charges being issued?
Well, I think firstly, there's 42 million vehicles on the road. There's 22.5 billion trips a year, people getting in their cars, and they're all going somewhere. They're going, to a destination. Their destination is not the car park. Their destination is somewhere, a facility near the parking bay that they park up in. So when my dad with his blue badge goes to hospital and parks in a blue badge bay, his destination is not the blue badge bay. His destination is to go and see the consultant in the hospital to get an update on his health check and what's going on, some reassurance, and that's something. He doesn't want stress of driving around a car park because somebody selfish has driven and used that, conveniently placed blue badge bay for him. So, he's not going to the blue badge bay. That's not his destination. His destination is the facility, and the car park management delivers that for my dad. That gives my dad a sort of a pleasant experience of arriving at a hospital and getting the service that he wants. So there are so many trips, and everybody's going somewhere, and the parking service, management of that service enables everybody to get around. If all of the car park facilities weren't there, there'd just be huge congestion. You know what it's like when you rush hour trying to get into a city, and with nowhere for those cars to arrive. It would just be like that on the roads the whole time. So yeah, I mean, we really do need to explain the service that our operators provide.
I guess the service that goes unseen, where it doesn't result in a PCN, and maybe your thoughts on why we've seen the increase in these PCN numbers over time.
Yeah, I think there was a rush decision. It predates just about my involvement in the private parking sector, but the introduction of legislation in 2012 that banned the immobilisation of vehicles. I don't think it was thought through. You know, you never clamped a vehicle twice. There was 30, you know, we now see that there's about at least 35% of all parking charges issued are issued to repeat offenders, those with 3 or more. So that obviously is driving an increase. But we've also seen a significant increase in the land that's managed. And that's because as the problem gets resolved somewhere, it moves to a different place and it moves to a different place. So we now have this situation. I think there was about 10,000 sites that were managed back in 2012, and there's nearly 50,000 now, and it's growing. You know, it is growing all of the time. We see when we're auditing everybody's sites every day, 30, 40, 50 sites that we're having to audit that are brand new sites that have never been managed in the past. So I think, yeah, when you combine new bits of land that are being managed, because there's now a problem on that land that there never was before, you combine that with the reduced deterrent. You know, some people, if you just completely ignore parking charge and don't care about a county court judgment, there is no consequence to you, and therefore there's no deterrent. And of course, we've heard Rishi Sunak talk about the need to be a deterrent for certain things, and that's exactly what we need here. And then obviously you couple that with Sarah's point about the number of vehicles. There's a significant increase in vehicles every day that goes on. More vehicles are on the road, there's more pressure. We've seen car parks being sold off by local authorities as well. So, you know, it is all pushing towards, and combine that with them people still, they don't understand the consequences of just parking somewhere for 10 minutes. I'll just bump up that curb, I'll park there, it doesn't cause any problem. And then somebody else sees that, so someone else bumps up the curb and someone else bumps up the curb. And before you know it, a landowner's got a curb that needs replaced and it costs them £1,000. And there's 15 other people that have parked just across the road and blocked somebody in. So it's, you know, it is that. They're my reasons as to why I think there's been an increase, to be honest.
And I guess if we look, and you know, anyone who knows, well, both me and Agini, you'll know we're a bit obsessive about stats, and this whole LinkedIn series started about data insights. I guess one of the stats I always quote, which I think most people who don't work in our sector find very surprising when positioned against, I guess, the media coverage of our sector, is we only issue enforcement actions for parking charge notices to about 0.3% of parking events we see in our car parks. So 99.7% of people are compliantly using car parks as they're being asked to do, as they should, creating no issues for them, no issues for the landowner, no issues for other motorists. It is that 0.3% of events which, from an enforcement perspective, get dealt with. You know, from my perspective, we are seeing that growing. You know, whether that's you know, the way that the mechanism works around enforcement is seen less of a deterrent. Whether it's more people are, to your point, Will, kind of, you know, well, let's see if I get caught. And I think there's quite a lot of, you know, just in my social circles, people think, do you think we need to pay today, or do you think we'll get away with it? It's a Sunday morning. Is a local authority going to be checking whether I'm here? And I think there is an attitude generally to, can I almost get away with not paying or not parking as I'm being asked to because it's not convenient for me? And is that something you kind of see?
Yeah, for me, as inflation is increasing, you can see that. You know, we've had a cap on the level. Both the British Parking Association and ourselves have had a cap on the level of parking charges at £100, and it had to be reduced to £60 within the first 14 days. Well, there's a lot of places now where £60 for a day's worth of parking is actually fairly cheap. You know, and couple that with the ability to leave your car somewhere for 2 weeks, and the risk is that you pay £60. There's all sorts of reasons. You know, I absolutely agree. I do believe inflation and the increase that we've had over the last 18 months is making a big difference. And I would like to see some more data. We, of course, did that research about the 99.77 that we had, and I know that that's increased from data that I've seen. It'd be really interesting to see what it is in a year's time. And it'd be really interesting to get some more intelligence on the 35% of repeat offenders. I actually think it's more like 50%, but I don't have the data to back that up. But it'd be really interesting to see if we could get that data. And of course, when you're thinking that less than 0.3% of parking events result in a parking charge, and of that 0.3%, 35% are repeat offenders, that makes it even a smaller proportion. Yeah. And again, but it's the media, it's the headline that you get from the media, and that's why we need to do some work on trying to change and trying to point out, actually, we do. What other industry would you have a 99.77% success rate and be criticised? Maybe the nuclear reactors, you'd probably want a little bit higher, but a lot of industries aren't getting anywhere near that level of compliance and seeing it as an unsuccessful industry.
Yeah, well, one thing, just I'm conscious we talk all the time in the sector about repeat offenders, but I'm mindful there's maybe people wondering what we mean. Can we just explain what you mean by a repeat offender, just so that's really clear for me?
Yeah, it's someone who's received at least 3 parking charges,
okay,
and that's it. As simple as that. There's some great science to it.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Just want to make sure we're clear. And Sarah, I'm keen we kind of wrap up this section, because I know particularly the 3 of us could probably talk all day, but that might not be what everyone watching today wants to see. What can we do more to kind of re-educate and, I guess, overcome this kind of almost kind of national reaction we have to parking, to explain the benefits and the value it brings to people 99.7% of the time?
Absolutely. I think we need to have a voice, don't we? We need to share more positively, not be responding to the negative press all the time, but be proactive and tell people just what we do and deliver to the sector. We keep hospital ambulance roadways clear so that ambulances can access A&E and get people the care they need. We keep the economy afloat by protecting spaces at retail parks. It's very easy for perhaps a worker who works alongside that retail park to take up a space and go off to their job all day. But that means that retail don't see the customers. Customers can't access the facilities they're wanting to. And I think it really is important to remember that 99.7% of people go about the business. They arrive at a site, or they read the terms and conditions of on the signage when they arrive, and they understand what to do, and they behave. And it's the selfish motorists, those the repeat offenders that Will's talked about, that we need to do something about.
Yeah, no, great. Okay, and look, I mean, from my perspective, I know we obviously all, we work passionately across the sector. I think lots of people take pride in the service that they deliver. I would just ask everyone in our sector to be a bit bolder, to be a bit more vocal about the service that we deliver, and find ways of spreading that message, because I do think this is at its heart an educational problem. We don't shout about the service when it works. And I guess everyone should just take that for granted. Parking should be pretty forgettable. You should be able to go to hospital and not have to think about how you park. And I think there's lots of credit goes out to the sector for how they manage so many assets and so many parcels of land in a way which just doesn't get in the way of the motorists, going about their daily work. But I do think almost we've shied away too much as a sector. And I think as business owners, people representing the sector, we need to find ways of being more vocal, more bolder, and I think actually prouder publicly about what we do. Will, I think you are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, doing bits of social media, it is a way to get a message out. I liken the issue. I think the educational issue is when I think about all sorts of problems that other industries have. If you think about racism within football, for example, there is no one quick solution that they have to do. You have to educate people obviously there are certain things that you can do, but you have to educate people, and you have to be in it for a long period of time to make a real change. And I think that's what we need to do here. We definitely need to educate people. And of course, we can't control mainstream media. We can try and have those relationships, have the conversations, but nobody's going to put us on for an hour on prime time on ITV, are they? Let's be honest. But we can get messages out and point out, like you say, most of the time you park without event. It is absolutely seamless. And as an industry, we've created apps, we've developed really good technologies, and we need to sing about those technologies and how it makes you just drive into a car park, disappear, and not even worry about it. You know, that's what we should be doing. And I always say I got into the industry at the unpopular, the dirty side of the industry, and actually it's the rest of the industry is the biggest part of the industry. We should absolutely be banging that drum about it. And now when people ask me if I ever go to a dinner party, if I ever actually leave my house, they say to me, what do you do? I used to, but now I get into a conversation. They may regret it because, as you say, we can talk for hours about parking. And we are three of the people who actually aren't like you, Sarah, aren't like what you said, Sarah, that the final destination is not the car park. For us, often it is. We're going around checking it's correct and so on.
No, sadly, I'm always quoting saying I've got more photos of car park signage than my kids on my camera reel. I mean, I do have 4 kids, but I also have a lot of photos of signage, quite sadly. But so just moving on, I mean, for me, what's been really encouraging of late is seeing both the BPA and the IPC coming together, representing the industry as one. Obviously, we've, all 3 of us, along with colleagues, have been heavily engaged with government of late, heavily engaged presenting to ministers and talking about how we can improve standards. And what's been great to see recently is that joint announcement from the BPA and the IPC on moving towards a single standard. And I'm keen now to kind of move into that process and explore that further. I guess I'd just to kind of segue us into that, I noted when that was publicised, actually there was quite a bit of criticism against the sector for coming in. And I noted particularly from some of the motorist representative organisations, maybe like the AA or the RAC Foundation. I guess I expected, support, welcoming these changes, consistency for motorists, but saw more of a negative reaction. It'd be nice just to maybe reflect on that and what are the BPA and the IPC doing, working with those types of organisations so we can all represent the motorist in every form.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, why are you so naive, Paul? Let's be honest. It was really frustrating, though. Both me and Sarah have spent a lot of time in meetings with some of the organisations that criticised, and I say criticised. They criticised, but at the same time welcomed some of the announcements that we were making. It was a really strange response from them. But for me, it was perhaps expected, but disappointing. And I think in the past we have tried to engage with them. We've certainly sat in lots of meetings with the government, listened to them. Me and Sarah, when we've been working through the code, have spent a lot of time trying to make sure that their comments and their observations have actually been adopted into our code. So there's been a lot that's gone on, but it's really been frustrating that they haven't been they've been quite proactive in criticising the industry, but not proactive in trying to help the industry do anything. And it disappoints me for anybody to be happy to criticise but not willing to do a lot to fix it. I sort of think, well, don't moan about it if you're not willing to do something to fix it. So it's been disappointing, their lack of engagement to some degree, but recently we have reached out and we've got some certainly from one of the organisations got a positive reply that they're willing to engage, and hopefully moving forwards, the code will always be under review, and the code is the first stage. There's looking at a scrutiny board or something like that will sit over and give guidance on what the code is. There's looking at what additional adaptations that we can make to independent appeals. This is when the motorist has appealed to an operator, it's been rejected, and they have the ability to have an independent appeal. So these are all conversations that myself and Sarah have been having. And hopefully they'll engage with it and we can constantly review. And if there is bits wrong with the code, or if there's technology that comes in tomorrow that can make something better, we can bring it into the code. So yeah, hopefully they'll engage a little bit more than they have. And hey, they may even get on board fully with the fact that the industry is doing the grown-up thing and making real changes that are for the benefit, because ultimately we want the same as them. we are in support of the motorist more than anybody. And there's not a single person, I don't believe, in the UK that is not impacted by parking on private land.
Yeah. And Sarah, is the door open from a BPA perspective to engage with those representative organisations? Is that something you'd encourage as well?
Absolutely. I feel actually optimistic. I think, we've got to look at how the media portray the parking operator, and they sensationalise things. And maybe they've taken some of the comments from these consumer groups, chosen the words they want to use the sensationalist lines, and haven't reflected the true story. But I remain optimistic and hopeful that the consumer groups will engage with us. There's an opportunity. Nothing stands still when you're raising standards. We've had codes of practice over the years. The BPA have had a code of practice. We started with version 1, we're on version 9. The IPC are also on version 9 of their current code of practice. And nothing will stand still with the sector code of practice when we go live with that. We'll be on version 1, but there's scope to improve and change things further. And it would be really great to get involved with those consumer groups and have their input onto that. The sector code that we're about to launch is based very much in terms of the raising standards elements that were brought through with the code of practice that the government have withdrawn. And the consumer groups were involved in developing that code of practice. So we are actually delivering much of what they've asked for. So it's disappointing to hear that they're not pro the sector code. I think if we get an opportunity to explain to them what the sector code is and where it came from, we can get them on our side and work with them really positively in the future. It'd be great to get that happening.
Well, I mean, look, from my perspective, great to hear there seems to be some movement there. And yeah, I guess to your earlier point, Will, about my naivety, I like to think I'm always optimistic. And like to, think that actually we all have the same common goal, which is to provide parking facilities for people to go about their business and not make their day talking about what happened in the car park. For all too often, and we know these assets are under challenge. We know lots of parking facilities are actually reserved for people who have a real need to use them. A lot of what we specialize in an organization is what we classify as uninvited parking. So private residential, social housing, education, healthcare, staff car parks for people working within an education setting or in a healthcare setting. They're not there for the general public to use. And all too often, that's exactly what's happening. And that is delaying people into their lecture, into their outpatients appointments. And I think for me, there's a general piece just about parking is so much more than a pay and display car park or a free stay car park in a retail area. And maybe something we need to reflect on in a sector is how we raise that awareness and more generally speak about actually how broad and how deeply it affects people in their everyday lives, and therefore the value of the service that we provide. But I'm keen in this next part of the conversation is just to really focus on, so what does a single code really mean, and what can people expect from this single code?
You or me, Sarah?
I think motorists and operators will benefit from the single sector code. It's one rule book. There's no more confusion of which code applies here, which ATA is responsible here. It's one rule book for everybody. So motorists can look at the code of practice, operators can look at the code of practice and understand exactly what's expected of the parking operator and what will be in place for the benefit of the motorist when they arrive at that parking destination or not parking destination, an uninvited area. There will be clear signage, and consistent signage across the sector. The motorists can understand and know what's expected of them or not expected of them on that land. I just think it's huge steps forward. There'll be an appeals charter. So again, where all operators are obliged to offer an appeal service. And there will be some mandated rules to follow for specific types of appeals. So again, motorists will know early doors how that appeal may well be handled by an operator. I just think it's great. It's the step forward. It's what government wanted. You know, they when the Act was brought about, the first tick box that they wanted to sign off was to have a single sector code, and this is what we're delivering. We're not waiting. We're delivering it now. Why wait to raise standards?
And thanks, Sarah. And Will, obviously, you know, lots of sectors have standards. How do we ensure kind of people meet those standards from an operator point of view? And what does the role of the BPA and the IPC play in ensuring those standards are met? And is there ever actually any consequence for someone who doesn't?
Yeah, I think if people, and we're certainly more than willing for people to come in and see what we do, the good thing about the single code is that everybody gets the same answer. That's the whole point now. Whatever it is, everybody gets the same answer. Doesn't matter whether they go to mum or dad, they get the same answer. That's the reality of it. But the amount of work that both the BPA and the IPC put in place, you know, we are looking at all sites now that our operators are managing. And if there is a complaint and if there is evidence that an operator is doing something that's in breach of the code, there's a new sanction scheme that's in place, and it's a consistent sanction scheme that me and Sarah finished off at 6 o'clock yesterday evening, actually. And so ultimately, if they do something wrong, there is a consequence. And it's a bit like a driving license, that if the more serious the breach that the operator has done, the more serious the amount of sanction points that they will get, up to ultimately a disqualification or an expulsion from the industry. So this is all the sort of stuff that we've been doing individually and separately, and now coming together and saying, actually, we're going to do it consistently in one way. So, you know, it's actually really nice to finish with that. But we've expelled people from the industry. I know the British Parking Association have expelled people from the industry. We don't want people not operating correctly within our industry. It's an industry that we want to be proud to be in. So how can you be proud to be in it if people are doing things that they shouldn't be? So yeah, there's without any shadow of a doubt, and the sanction scheme will be there for everybody to see, and it will be now consistently adopted from both sides.
Yeah, and those points you make around, you know, validating people are achieving the standards. How are we doing that? Is that done through audit? Is that done through kind of a random sample? It'd be good to, I guess, you know, just raise awareness about how those standards are maintained. Yeah,
the audit information is another document that we've provided extra clarity on within the code, saying that every operator will be audited annually, and there will be ongoing audits. So there's a mandatory requirement to register all sites with both the IPC and the BPA. So it's the first time that we'll have an absolute list of all the locations that are being managed by private parking operators, and we will have details of their signage that's in situ on those particular sites as well, to slightly different degrees at different locations. But yeah, there's also an ongoing ability for motorists to complain, and we use intelligence-led auditing. If we're getting lots of complaints about a particular operator or lots of complaints about a particular location, we're able to go in and proactively stop operators from operating where they're doing things that they shouldn't be. So yeah, there's a heck of a lot, and it's the most consistent it will ever be once we roll out the new code, which is going to come before the end of this month.
Okay, and Sarah, there's been lots of talk about signage, which I imagine if you don't work in the industry sounds incredibly dull. I mean, to be fair, it's not the most exciting topic we have in the industry. But why is signage so important? And you made a point earlier about motorists reading the signage. Why is that such an important part of people parking?
Absolutely. Well, it sets out the expectations. It's, you know, private parking on private land is managed through contract law, and it's the contract that appears on the signage. And you know, if you've got confusing instructions, you know, we've all been there where we've opened up a flat pack piece of furniture and you look at the instructions and you get your mate along and you're both looking at it and you don't know what to do. It's confusing. And the sector code is all about creating clear, concise guidance on signage as to what you need to do when you arrive in that car park. So at the weekend, I went to see a show with my family. We arrived at a car park. We were a little bit late. We didn't want to miss the beginning. We got to the car park. We read the signage. We understood how we needed to pay for this parking. We needed to pay on exit. We needed to take a ticket away with us now. And we knew what so we could confidently leave that car park knowing that we understood what we needed to do to fulfill that contract when we left. So it's about clear signage. We didn't want to stand there for 10 minutes scratching our heads wondering how we manage, what we need to do here. We understood it and we could leave. And again, it's not about parking in the car park, in the multi-storey car park. It was about getting to the theatre, to our destination. And it's just seamless. That's what we want it to be, seamless, something you don't even need to think about, the actual parking experience. So it's really, really important that signage is clear, that the expectations of the motorist, what they need to do to be able to park and be one of the 99.7% of people who never get a parking charge,
Yeah.
And just to come back to that education point, when you get in the car for the first time, how do you know about the rules of parking on private land, on public land? You absolutely have no idea about it, do you? But we have a theory test, a hazard perception test now, and a driver test. And at no point do we educate new drivers about what their obligations are with their vehicle on private land. Why aren't we asking the government to actually put something on the driving theory test, for example? And that straight away might make a bigger difference than anything that the industry can do.
Yeah, great. I'm conscious, want to start to wrap up. I thought we might go into like a bit of a quick fire round, which I know we've not prepared for at all. But just,
Paul.
It is a bit, well, there we go. I did send out the details. Maybe you didn't fully read the contract for this session. Well, but anyway,
I'm losing signal, Paul. I'm sorry.
Just, so I don't think you'll have an issue with any of the questions. So you announced, both the BPA and the IPC announced recently that there's a new code and it'll be published in June. So when in June can we expect that?
In June.
In June. So it's not going to be July. We are going to deliver against in June.
June.
Okay. Fine. And when will the code be implemented for new sites?
October.
This year?
This year.
1st of October.
1st of October. Okay, great. And then for all of the existing sites that people have operated against different codes, will there be a period where people will have to migrate to the new code? And if so, how long does that period last for?
Yeah, quick fire answer is it's the end of 2026, so 31st of December 2026. But just to put that into perspective, we in the industry all know the volume of signage that's out there and the mammoth job that it is to actually change things. So it isn't as easy as when you've got 50,000 locations, probably with an average of 30 signs on each of those sites. It's a big old job, an expensive job, and it's one that actually has a bit of an impact on the environment, which is why we've taken a bit of time to make sure that we're getting the signs as good as we possibly can.
Yeah, okay. And will this code be available for the general public to read and understand?
Yes.
From the point it's published some point this month?
Absolutely.
Okay. And one question which you might enjoy less, lots of the feedback I hear is, well, there's no point in me appealing independently because it's not independent at all. So can we just tackle that perception that this independent appeal service, for which I know is different right now, is it independent? Is it there to truly arbitrate a case between the operator and the motorist, or is it not? How do you deal with that suggestion that it's not really that independent? So what's the point? And it'd be good to hear from you both, because I know both organisations run separate independent appeal service.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go first. ultimately, one of the biggest criticisms is that the parking operators pay for the appeal and therefore it's not independent. And that's still going to be the case, even if the government were to implement a single appeal service, because it's the industry that's going to need to pay for it. So what we do to make sure that we have independent, first is there is legislation that's out there about arbitration and alternative dispute resolution, and we make sure that we comply with that and we get assessed independently against that. We achieve the independent side of it all by making sure that it's solicitors and barristers that are appointed to make an independent decision, the same as the judiciary is. The judiciary is paid for by the government, but most of the time it's either the state in some form that's on the other side of it, be it a criminal prosecution or be it a judicial review. They're paying for the judge, but the judge makes an independent decision because that's what we do by laws. And I'm not saying that that's the only way that you can achieve independence, but that's how we make sure that we achieve it. And I know Sarah has a different way that's equally as good.
Absolutely. I mean, we achieve independence by contracting a supplier of that service. They're going out to tender for an independent appeal service that's currently provided by Flexible Resolution Services. And they're completely separate organisation. As Will mentioned, it's an obligation on the parking operator to pay for that service. So that's why that transaction exists. But we have no say, no oversight of the actual decisions that are made. We have a service level agreement that, you know, that organisation will manage all of the independent appeals that are raised with them. They provide us reports, but we have no say over the adjudication process whatsoever. You know, don't get any involvement in that at all.
Okay.
And I think just Paul, if possible, just to touch on the appeals, the aim is that the sector single code is the first step. The next steps is to look at the other framework that the government wanted to introduce and see whether we can implement some of it sooner. One of the conversations that myself and Sarah have already had is there things that we can do in terms of consistency of appeals and how the motorist is told about the appeals to make it more streamlined? Because I think one of the criticisms is that how do you know who to appeal? Now, I can get into my views of nobody knows about us until they've received a notice that tells them how to appeal. But the reality is we can perhaps remove that criticism by putting measures in place, and there are conversations that we as an industry, as Sarah says, nothing stands still when you're raising standards. And that's sort of the next steps that we're looking at as well.
Yeah, no, great. Look, I appreciate both your answers to that. And I guess working in this sector, for me, you know, lodging cases with both Independence Appeal Service, from my perspective, it is very independent. You know, we don't always agree with the outcomes, we don't always agree with the decisions, and that's just reality. And I'm sure many motorists feel they've been through that process and maybe didn't get the outcome that they want. But from my perspective, you can feel the independence, just someone who uses those services. Couple of questions just to kind of close then. So first question to you both, you know, what's the one thing you would ask of people working in the industry that we can do more of to raise awareness, improve education, and tackle this perception we have?
For me, work within the spirit of what we're trying to do. That's the reality. Don't look at technically this, technically that. Work within the spirit of what we're trying to do, which is the right thing. So always ask yourself, what's the right thing?
Yeah. Okay.
And I would say talk about the positives that we bring. You know, don't shy away at the dinner party conversation from saying that you're involved in parking. Talk to people about the benefits of the service. That, you know, you're actually providing people with access to facilities that they want, that you're protecting blue badge bays. You know, talk about the great things that this sector really do deliver, and be proud.
And then what's the one thing you'd like to see, I guess, happen as a result of the sector coming together in a single code? Maybe from those people, those doubters about the sector, those people with the negative perceptions, what's the one thing you'd say to them today?
Engage. You know, and we're here to listen and genuinely try and make a difference. So engage with us. and be honest in your criticism. If we've done something that's good, tell us we've done something that's good. If there's something that you still want us to improve, tell us. We'll improve it.
Yeah, I concur with that. You know, we're on version 1. Let's have your feedback and move to version 2.
Yeah.
No, great. Excellent. Well, look, I really appreciate both your times today. I'm happy to take any questions if you've got any from me. I'm conscious I've been asking all the questions today. If there is anything you had for me, then always very happy to take that as well.
On your round of golf on Saturday, what did you shoot?
Oh, well, yeah, definitely more than I should have. I think I scored something like 92.
Really? What
That's
about
the Yeah. Yeah, well, no, thanks for that. Well, I do seem to recall the last time that we played together, maybe I did beat you that day.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we both know, and as many people who are golfers, you never quite get the time to put into practicing enough, do you? And golf is definitely one of those games where practice counts. But look, I want to thank you both for coming on today. This is, I think, a topic that's easier to not talk about. I think this is something that's easier to not put yourselves out there and put yourself in the situation to talk about it. I love the sector. I love doing what we do. I love the business that I lead in Agena, and I think about the thousands of customers that we support and the millions of people every day who use the facilities that we manage, who we have no dealings with whatsoever. And I will be focusing really hard, you know, both to support this code with the BPA and the IPC, and to continue to kind of send the positive messages about why parking management is needed. You know, if I go into a car park which has no signage, I guess I can do what I want, can I? That's the lesson from today, because there won't be any management. I'm not entering a contract. I'm free to do what I like.
It might not be a privately managed one. You just need to be careful. There could be bylaws on it. It's a very complicated thing. But yeah, absolutely. The safest place is if there's a sign that says you're going to be clamped. That's probably one where there's no management.
But I guess my view is, if there is signage, that signage is there to help you to know how to park and how to use that facility. And if you, like the 99.7% of people, comply, you won't get into this process of a PCN. And I just think it feels to me like there's just a big job to do to kind of stand up as an industry, speak out about the value that we bring, and focus on the positives and change the rhetoric away from the negativity that we see around these PCNs. Just very quickly, because I know I'm trying to wrap up and now I'm extending it. We did a piece of work where we engaged with every editor from every publication, news publication, about the increase of abuse we're seeing in accessible bays by drivers of SUVs. And not one news outlet would take that story. Not one. Now, I think that is a massive detriment to society, to the people with the most need in our car parks, and the impact that we see every single day. For us, it's the single biggest area we're seeing the growth in where our enforcement services are needed.
Yeah.
But we could not get a single news outlet to pick up that story. We eventually got it into a trade publication, which got very little traction. And that's something, for me, I don't feel ready to give up on. I don't feel ready to stop wanting people to hear that story and hear the positive work that goes on across our sector. So I know you're both very supportive. I know there's lots of people in our industry who are very passionate about what we do. I just maybe today, maybe the single code is the start of us being a bit more vocal about the positives that we can bring as a sector and the benefits we give to the vast majority of people who park their cars every day.
Absolutely.
So again, I'm going to try and wrap up again this time, but actually finish, because I know those people who have endured this for 55 minutes will be getting ready to go off. So a massive thanks, Will. A massive thanks, Sarah, for joining me today, and a big thanks both for the support that you both bring to Agena Group and your ongoing desire to kind of raise standards and support the sector as you both do so amazingly. And a big thanks to everyone who's joined us today. As I say, I know we have lots of people joining us live. We have lots of people watching back. I am really excited to announce our next LinkedIn Live. So in 2 weeks' time, we won't be talking about parking. We'll be exploring leadership in its more broader sense. And I'm really delighted to be joined actually by Caroline Esterson. And you'll see the link posted below on this post. I'd love many people to come back and join us in a couple of weeks' time. I'm really excited actually about that conversation. I've recently been putting myself in the situation of just talking a bit more openly about what it's like to run a business. Some of you may have seen I've just come off the back of doing a 7-day diary, talking about my day and what's happened in my organization. And what I'll be exploring with Caroline a little bit more is just that role of a leader and how our behaviors now, our interactions can have such a profound effect on the people around us. Now, I do just want to finish because there was some suggestion, Will, that you might be picking up this 7-day diary challenge on LinkedIn, but I haven't actually seen you publicly commit to it yet. So
no, you haven't. No.
So I was thinking maybe this would be a great opportunity and a perfect way to close for you to either commit or not.
I did commit to you earlier on.
Okay. All right. Well, let's make it public. I know you've said it to me
It's
personally.
too late now. It's out there, isn't it? Yeah.
Let's make it public. Well, that's great.
I'm more than happy if people want to see what I'm doing for 7 days.
Well, I would love to. So we will add you to the schedule. And Sarah, there's plenty of opportunities for you to join us as well. So maybe listen in to Will, and if you want to join that schedule, that'd be great. I think what I'm just trying to do is just to spread that view of how different people see running their business and what they experience every day. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to just share a bit of knowledge and expertise. So, okay, well, that's you now committed, which is great. So that's the 4th one of our series. So I'll add you to the schedule. Thanks, and we will catch up soon. Right, let's wrap it up there. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing everyone back in 2 weeks' time, and I appreciate everyone who's joined us today.
Excellent.
Thanks, all.
Thanks, Paul. Really good.
Thank you.